circuit.
Yeah, we talked in previous tournaments, they were always joking around about, oh, the teams to be running seem to be poison double water or, water double poison. Now we have potential with Azumarill and Tinkerton with all of their bulk to their name to be maybe running double fairy.
Double fairy is the way to go, right?
You think so?
I mean, it makes sense. The only extreme good answer to this double fairy is a Swampert. Why? Because it has sludge. And it also has Hydro Cannon and Mud Shot, so it does super effective and great damage against these two fairies. But speaking of fairies, we have two, let's say, again, non-Tinkerton drafts.
Yeah, at this point, I think a lot of teams are choosing, do I want to play meta or do I want to play Pokemon that could potentially counter the meta that is going to be in Strange Top? We've seen him before. He's actually on one of our players to watch for this event, running a team with what all of you had on your caster predictions for a Fire-type Pokemon that could be doing a lot of damage in this tournament, that Talonflame. And also, check out the movesets on it, because this Talonflame is running Fly and Flame Charge, while a lot of them opt to run Fly and Brave Bird.
Yeah, I think Fly Flame Charge comes as a great effect when there is a Tinkerton on the other side, but unfortunately for him there is none. But there is a jump off the target. There's also a Diggersby to target as well for the Talonflame, so it's not going anywhere. I think it's a great Pokemon. Also, one of the Pokemon that I really want to bring out is again the Credilli. I think even against what we see in the meta against Tinkerton, not all of them are running Heavy Slam. So suddenly...
None of them have seemed to be running Heavy Slam.
Yeah, absolutely. So it does have play. Of course, it's going to be damage over time slowly, but then again, it has Rock Tomb, and Rock Tomb can debuff Tinkerton. Of course, it's not a great... it's not a great attack Pokemon, Tinkerton, so... well, it works.
I think, yeah, one thing that we've been seeing a lot more often in this current meta is Pokemon that have different move sets that can be doing potential different things to their opponents. So let's say, for example, I mean like the Diggersby running Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands has the opportunity, has the potential to debuff your opponent's attack. Some of the other things like Rock Tomb on that Credilli and also on that Claydol are guaranteed attack debuffs. Malamar is a superpower that debuffs yourself. So a lot of times I think we see the Malamar in the lead, but that could end up being able to be a little bit different between these two trainers, which we had. And this is Borja's team.
I think Malamar is a great pick here. Looking at what his opponent has, you have Drapion, of course, going to take good damage from the superpower. Azumarill, if you have, let's say, the attack breakpoint that we always talk about on the Malamar, can be played out as well. Credilli, not so great matchup against the Malamar. Lapras, not so great matchup against the Malamar. Talonflame, kind of okay, but it depends. And then Claydol at the end. Of course, your Psy-Waves are not doing a lot of damage, but then you can hit it with this super effective foul play. The Malamar looks really good. One more Pokemon that I want to point out here is the Lapras. Instead of running, let's say, the moveset that we've been used to today, which is Sparkling Aria and Ice Beam, we have Skull Bash on the side of Borja.
Yeah, Borja's seeming to think, okay, if there's going to be a lot of other Laprases, maybe I want to do better in the mirror, or perhaps against an Azumarill or another type Pokemon where that Skull Bash not only boosts your own defense, but actually does some heavy hitting damage. We're hopping right into the battles here. We're seeing Strange Top on the left versus Borja on the right. We've got that Malamar we were talking about on the field against something it actually does not really want to see in the Azumarill.
I think this is not a great matchup for the Malamar to be in, especially in the lead, because of course it's not a... you have to pull a lot of shields as a Malamar to win this matchup, but unfortunately at the lead is not where you want to do it. Borja immediately swapping into the Lapras, trying to get any energy lead he can. Azumarill going for this play rough.
Play rough just to do a little bit of chipping. I think we might see a chip and dip strategy where we get a little bit of a defense, get a little bit of chipping away of that health, and now swapping to something else. It looks like he's stored up 100 there, going for either a play rough or an Ice Beam later in the game. But in comes the Lapras, and now this is a Skull Bash. This again is going to be doing so much more damage, and Strange Top puts up a shield.
Yeah, great shielding there, but unfortunately for Strange Top, his Lapras does not have access to Skull Bash, so it cannot do a ton of damage to Borja's Lapras, which is already defense boosted by that Skull Bash. Strange Top, amazing counting, throwing his Sparkling Area just before Borja gets to his next Skull Bash.
Yeah, Borja doesn't bother putting up shield, knows that it's not very effective, and now the second Skull Bash goes through at this point. Again, this will do a nice chunk of damage to Strange Top. Let's that second one go through because that first Lapras is so low, but an immediate pivot out now into that Shadow for Alligator. I don't know if this is the play when there is already so much energy on that Lapras, but it's got to go somewhere.
Yep, Then again, this is resisted, of course, but this is not a shadow for Alligator, so it can tank the energy a little bit more. But in comes his Azumarill. Azumarill has the access to the player off, and this is going to do a ton of damage if unshielded, and Boria does not pull up a shield. But then again, look at that Feraligatr, the normal Feraligatr completely dealing with this player off.
Recognizing that the regular Feraligatr has a little bit more bulk to its name, and what it does lack in the efficient charge attacks here, it can make up with quick pacing energy here, going to be able to outpace before the next play rough goes through. And Strange Top, no shield on this side. I think he knows that Hydro Cannon might not be enough to knock out.
Yeah, remember, Hydro Cannon is definitely not enough to knock out the Azumarill, but then again, this is going to be a very interesting endgame. Oh, he lets it go. Maybe he wants a farm down with the Drapion to get ahead, but in comes an immediate Malamar swap here. This is all going to come down to who calls the move. Foul play coming in. If unshielded, this is a great call for Strange Top, but he pulls up a shield.
Unfortunately for Strange Top here, because this looks like this Malamar has so much energy, tries to catch on to the Lapras, but just gives the opportunity to completely farm here. I love this play by Borja because though the foul play takes a little bit longer to get to, he doesn't debuff himself by using that superpower. So now he still has a ton of energy. He still has a superpower loaded, but there's so much energy also on this Drapion. 2 shields left on Borja's side.
Yeah, 2 shields left on Borja's side, but of course, the pacing has been slightly adjusted, so now the foul play has the exact same pacing as the superpower. So we have back-to-back superpowers stored on the Malamar. First superpower coming in. This will do a lot of damage. Strange Top, unfortunately, has no shields, hide behind superpower, puts it in the red, and in comes another superpower to seal the deal. Drapion goes out of the field.
You see Strange Top taking down some notes, taking down some energy counts for that next game. Great play from Borja there, coming back from a very negative lead. Obviously, with the Azumarill, none of the charge attacks, that foul play or superpower, would be doing too much damage. You can power through as the Malamar using 2 shields, but that's not how Borja wanted to play it. He took all of that energy and he ended up swapping out, and it sealed him the deal, having that Skull Bash on the Lapras for him.
Skull Bash made a huge difference in this matchup. It's one of the things that you have to look out for. Do you have a lot of Lapras answers in your team, even if you're running your own Lapras? If you don't, you really need to have access to that Skull Bash to at least put a check on the opposing Lapras. So at this point, if you're Strange Top, you would want to try and bring that Credilli. Credilli is a great answer to a Skull Bash Lapras because you get to the rock tombs for super effective damage and debuffing the Lapras, and Sparkling Area, of course, it's a water type move, so you are completely fine as a grass type Pokemon.
Credilli has definitely some play into this. The real question is, does Strange Top want to bring it? It looks like he had a game plan. Whether or not we could argue that it went for him in this matchup, we have to figure out what is going to be the big targets, right? So if this Lapras is so strong on Borja's side, like you called out, that Credilli is one of the better answers. Does Borja recognize that maybe Strange Top will be willing to play that game number 2 and shift his strategy to be able to counter that Pokemon with a lot of things that he has on his team? Say, let's say the Clodsire, or perhaps, yeah, I mean, mainly the Clodsire.
I think the Clodsire has a lot of play, but then again, Borja didn't need that favorable lead to win that matchup. We have Strange Top, on the other hand, who needs to make the modification. That's going to be pivotal on how this matchup goes. For example, leading his own Lapras, because of course Borja came with a negative matchup with the Malamar at game number 1. Let's see what happens. We have a Lapras lead into a Clodsire. Depending on the moveset of the Clodsire, this is going to be either very favorable to Lapras or so-so to Lapras.
I think it looks pretty favorable to Lapras, at least from one side. The Psywave damage just chunking away at one of the bulkiest Pokemon we have in the Great League. One thing he obviously needs to be worried about is this charge attack. It's going to be super effective, but it's not enough to knock him out. And at this point, you have to wonder, does he want to keep it as Lapras? Exactly, because now there's going to be a Lapras mirror, and there's nothing that Strange Top can really do. Looks like he's going to go for a little bit of a chip and probably a dip strategy here.
It'll be interesting to which Pokemon he dips into. Will it be the Drapion because it has a negative matchup? No, he goes into the Azumarill. Azumarill, of course, will get to this player off to do neutral damage, but not before Lapras gets to this Skull Bash to boost its defense. I think with one more shield, Borja's Lapras is going to be in such a great position.
That Skull Bash does nice chunk of damage to the Azumarill. Not only that, the defenses have Risen, Play Rough coming through from the Azumarill side, but it's not going to be enough to knock out. Azumarill is going to need 2 attacks to be able to knock out, and that Lapras is getting mighty close to another Skull Bash.
Yeah, another Skull Bash will be coming in really soon here. Lapras going for this Skull Bash. This, if unshielded, will put that Azumarill deep into the red, and that's exactly what Strange Top does. No shielding the Azumarill and hoping against hope he gets to another move. He gets to a Play Rough, but no, not before the Psy Wave knocks out the Azumarill. This is a devastating position to be in.
At this point here, still so much energy on the Lapras, and at this point too, forced to now use a shield on that drop-in. I think if you're Strange Top, you're maybe going to want to try to go for an aggressive farm down, and Borja doesn't want to let that happen. Coming in now with that Clodsire and just getting a bit of energy. Neither one of these fast attacks are going to be doing much. They're relying solely on the charge attacks here.
Yep, a first charge attack coming in, Aqua Tail, super effective damage. Tanking the Aqua Tail and immediately swapping into the Lapras. Great call there, putting the Clodsire in a range where Sparkling Area can potentially knock it out, but this is not the end of the game. Clodsire barely survives and gets to that Stone Edge. This Stone Edge, if unshielded, will knock out the Lapras, and of course, this is looking very dire for Strange Top.
Strange Top's in a similar position as he was the other game with the Drapion in the back, because he's about to see the Pokemon that is remaining. If that Lapras comes back in, he might have to try to completely farm it down, but he still doesn't know what's in the back line here. No, coming in with that Malamar instead, I think potential for a chip and dip strategy. We're going for that superpower to debuff, then maybe swapping back out to the Lapras, forcing himself now to take this first crunch.
Yeah, I think great call there. What would happen here ideally in this case is you double up superpower and then throw the first one, go into the Lapras, and then come back again. Aqua Tail coming in. This could be really close here, because if there is a small mistake in the timing of the Malamar, that superpower will take the Poison Sting from the Drapion will do a lot of damage here. Superpower number 1 coming in, immediately shielded by Strange Top.
Strange Top knows that there's still another Pokemon that can reset, so it's up to him. Does he wants to throw right away? It looks like it was going to be charge attack, forcing another shield here. There is a superpower stored. Is he going to throw immediately if you're Borja's side? I mean, you're out of shields. I guess you pretty much have to, right?
You had to, but is this enough? It's a debuffed superpower. And how much energy does the Lapras have? Does it have enough in the tank to get through this Drapion? I think so. Psywave after Psywave, and Lapras takes it 2-0 for Borja.
Borja taking the victory against a top competitor here in Spain. Strange Top, a world's competitor in the previous season, also doing very well. I think he is ranked 32 in the global or in the EU leaderboard currently. And Borja saying, not on my watch. I want to rise in the ranks too. I will see you guys in winners round 4.
A dominant gameplay there. I think that Lapras put in so much work. It effectively in game number 2 took out the Azumarill, did damage to the Lapras, and also towards endgame made sure that the Drapion was Psywave down as well. Such a dominant Pokemon. One of the reasons why Lapras is here to stay so good, and also has a pretty neutral matchup against Tinkaton.
I mean, I think that the main thing that we can kind of take away from this Lapras is the fact that it was running Skull Bash, when a lot of them seem to be running Ice Beam for that either grass coverage or for different coverage that it needs. But if you are running a Pokemon that almost everyone is, and yours is going to have that dominant matchup, that really might come into play. And again, that is my reasoning for potentially running Heavy Slam on a Tinkaton. We haven't really, at least any of the games that I have casted over, all of them are running Bulldoze. Obviously, they probably know something that I don't, but I think that there's a big play for not only Heavy Slam Tinkaton, but also the Skull Bash Lapras that we just saw Borja use to absolute perfection.
Skull Bash Lapras, but here comes Malamar with the back-to-back superpower in game number 1 to knock out the Drapion. I think it's like it's the same story, game 1 and game 2. Two Pokemon did a great deal of work for Borja. That was the Malamar and the Lapras. Of course, as long as you don't have a Tinkaton in your team, these two Pokemon can do a ton of work against you, because Tinkaton kind of does a great job in breaking this core in a bit, because it does double super effective damage against the Malamar and it resists the Psywaves from the Lapras. And yeah, unfortunately for Borja, there was no Tinkaton on the other side.
I think that there's a lot of interesting things that we could call out about Borja's team too, because there was a Clodsire on this team, right? There's something that we don't see as often anymore. There was a Malamar. a lot of the Pokemon that were on his team were Pokemon that we've seen throughout like the different metas, the Feraligatr, things that have been here to stay. The main addition to his team that seems to be something that's relatively new, that updated from the Might and Mastery season, is that Lapras, and he really played that to perfection.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why Clodsire is slowly pushed out of the meta, even though it has on paper decent matchup against most of the Pokemon, great matchup against Jumpluff, great against Lapras, great against Pokemon like Tinkaton, but unfortunately for Clodsire, the problem is the pacing. It gets there so slow. Even against the Lapras outpaces you for the Sparkling Aria because you need to land that Stone Edge to do sizable amount of that damage to the Lapras, but unfortunately, it's just so slow in a very fast-paced meta.
I mean, there's tons of different arguments for whether you want to play one moveset or another. It really comes down to your different team composition, right? And how it kind of goes with the synergy of your team. One Pokemon I'm very curious about what you think is has any synergy with any team right at all would be Vanillite.
I think that I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a Pokemon that we might not see a lot of play competitively, but
we're going to see a lot tomorrow.
You're going to see a lot tomorrow indeed. We have the Community Day tomorrow for Vanillite, one of the featured attacks that you can